video game you can get away with. Well, sometimes.
Hello and welcome to the last in the current series of Replay Retro. And for our Season 1 swan song, it's time to take a look at one of the many handheld gaming platforms which has fallen to the mighty Game Boy over the years. I'm Matt, and this week it's all about the Atari Lynx. In 1989, the original Game Boy hit the market, and Nintendo has dominated handheld video gaming ever since. But of course, this lucrative market has attracted the attention of all the major players at some point in time, with systems from Bandai, NEC, Sega and SNK to name but a few. Each of these systems were all considered to be better than the Game Boy in many technical respects, but none of them have ever managed to remove the simple system from its throne, and the Lynx, of course, was no exception to this rule. While the system is known as an Atari console, it was in fact developed by R.J. Mikal and Dave Needle for the Epic Software Company, who felt the time was right to try and enter the hardware market, before the nearly completed Handy project was sold to Atari in 1988 due to financial problems. In the final period of design, Atari conducted market research and discovered that consumers felt they would be getting more for their money if a system was physically quite large, and with this in mind, they designed the console's case to space out components, making the system slim but very wide. The name was also changed to Lynx, bringing the system in line with the planned Panther and Jaguar home consoles, and within a year Atari were ready to bring the system to market. The Lynx was the first console, portable or otherwise, with hardware support for sprite zooming and distortion effects, which allowed for lightning-fast games with a 3D appearance, such as the visually stunning Afterburner clone, Blue Lightning. Users could also link up to 8 systems together via the Comlinks cable, for multiplayer dogfights in Warbirds or to explore the depths of Todd's adventures in Slime World. It's very easy to see why Atari felt smug on launch day, as they presented their 16-bit handheld with its backlit colour screen to an audience which was only just letting go of the 8-bit generation of home systems. And on the face of it, they had every right to expect the system to destroy Nintendo's 8-bit monochrome Game Boy, as the Lynx was by far and away a vastly more impressive system. However, early adopters found the screen to be blurry in fast-paced games, and were shocked to discover that it could devour 6 AA batteries in just 4 hours. Nevertheless, Atari were convinced the superior technology of the Lynx would see their sales outweigh the Game Boy when the all-important Christmas season came round. But when the wrapping paper came off on Christmas morning, there was one clear winner. Nintendo's technically inferior Game Boy had utterly smashed the Lynx, leaving Atari in shock. Adding further insult to injury, it seemed consumers had changed their minds and didn't like the chunky system, as they struggled to find it portable. In 1991, the Lynx was relaunched in a more comfortable case and with a much better screen, removing the blur problem and improving the battery life. Stereo sound was also added to the already impressive specification, and the price was dropped to match the Nintendo price. But it was already too late, as the Game Boy was firmly entrenched as the handheld of choice for gamers, and it would stay that way for all of the known future, as various versions of the system kept it on top of the market, leaving the Lynx an undeserved failure and a sad footnote in Atari history. But now it's time to take a look at the hardware and a few of the games and give this 16-bit powerhouse one last shot at fame. Okay, so here we are with the Mark I and the Mark II Atari Lynx. Take a look at the Mark I first. As you can see, it is a very large system, but don't forget that market research that Atari conducted that told them that people wanted something like this. On the front face then here, you have of course the screen right in the middle there, you can't miss that. Then you have the D-pad to the left here, quite a stiff D-pad, but it does give good response. You can feel that you are hitting the contacts there, so that's quite good. Your power on and power off buttons. And then over this side you have option 1, option 2 and the center function button. When you combine the center function with option 1 you get restart. Option 2 and center function flips the screen, which we'll come to in just a moment. Then here you have your speaker, your B and A buttons, so just a simple 2-button system, much like the Game Boy and the Game Gear that would follow. And then here again you have the B and A buttons repeated. Now this was for a really clever feature that Atari's designers had thought of. Essentially, at the minute, looking like this, the system is designed for a right-handed player, such as myself, to hold here and play happily. However, if you were left-handed, this could be awkward. So what you would do is you would press Option 2 and the middle button to flip the screen. You would then flip the console, and you have your A and B buttons now on the left, and your D-pad on the right. An absolutely fantastic idea, and one that hasn't been repeated since, and really should be. Then on the top of the system here, you have your power jack, your Lynx port for that all-important multiplayer cable, your headphone jack, and your volume dial. Underneath, a simple brightness dial for the screen. On this side, nothing. On the back here, you have your battery bay, where you would drop 6 AA batteries and watch as within 4 hours they were eaten by the system. And then on this side here, you pop this flap and your game cartridges slot just in there. And that is the Mark I Lynx. Moving on then to the Mark II, you can see by holding it in front of the Mark I, it's a much thinner system, it's not quite as wide, it's about the same height, and it is significantly thicker, but it's far more comfortable to hold because of the inclusion of these rubber grips here and an improved ergonomic design. You can get your fingers in round here and it holds a lot better. The ability to flip the screen has been retained. As you can see, there are still the same number of buttons, so you can flip it and play it the other way around. Although the new buttons do feel much better than the buttons on the first model, so that's a big improvement. The D-pad as well has been modified to no longer show the diagonal positions, which weren't actually used by the system, so it's now just a simple 4-way. On this side, your power buttons are retained, just as you would expect them to be. The system now features a power LED, which would warn you if the batteries were on their way out. And to save on battery life, this button here operated the backlight. So if you were pausing the game for a long period of time, rather than having it drain power while it sits there, you could turn off the backlight and a vast amount of power could be saved there. So that's a fantastic feature, again, thrown in by Atari's team. Down this side, the buttons are very much the same as they were on the Mark I. On the top, you'll find all the same ports and dials that were featured on the top of the Mark I Lynx. However, the brightness dial from the bottom has now been moved to the top to join them. So everything is together in one place, a much better design in my opinion. This, of course, means that the bottom now doesn't have anything on it, and in fact is your new battery bay. So again, you would put 6 AA batteries in there, but they will last significantly longer than they would do in the original system. On the back then, you can see that now the cartridge port has moved to here. So you simply slot your cartridges into the back, much like the Game Gear and the Game Boy, and then flip it round and you're ready to play on a Lynx. The games come in cardboard packages like this one here. This is Robo Squash, and the cartridges themselves look like this. They're almost like a variant of the Hue cards used by the TurboGrafx systems or the PC Engine systems, depending on where you're from in the world. And they include this little lip here, well, at least the later games include this little lip here to enable pulling them out of the system to be easier. So for example, you would slot your game in like that with the sticker facing towards the screen, and then to make it easier to get out, the lip there catches your fingers and you just pull the game straight out. And they are the Atari Lynx handheld systems. Now that we've seen them, let's take a look at the games. Okay, so to film the games we'll be using the Mark II system, purely because mine works better than my Mark I. and I'm sure I'll do terribly at the games because I'm looking through the camera's viewfinder rather than the screen. The first game we'll look at is Robo Squash, which is the game we looked at the packaging of. So let's start her up. The sound quality on this system is far better than anything the Game Boy would pull off. Let's skip through this. The game is basically... I'm going to have to make a klutz, I think we'll have to go for to give me a fighting chance, difficulty wise. Now the game is basically squash. You can see me moving my racket here, there are obstacles in the middle, and the other player is sending me the ball. Oh, I didn't have a clue where that one went. You can see there's a splat mark where the ball has hit my screen. I managed to knock that one back to him. The sound and graphics of this system are just so much better than anything the Game Boy would go on to produce. In fact, they're better than anything the Game Boy would produce, because the Game Gear would produce. Because remember, this, what I'm holding now, is a 16-bit system compared to the 8-bit system of the Master System. Now that splat is going to make it very difficult, I think. Oh, there you go, managed to return it. And that's enough of that. Let's look at another game. Right, so the next game we'll look at here is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, obviously based on the movie. Again, listen to that sound, there's some amazing sound that this handheld can produce. And even that title screen alone is better than anything the Game Boy would produce. Start a new game. And there's the time machine itself landing. And as you can see, nothing in the tree, dude. As you can see, this is a bit of an exploration game. Kind of conceptually, I suppose, the same idea as Zelda. Oh, what's that down there? Although, as you can tell, again, the graphics of this system are better than even the NES. And remember, this is a 16-bit handheld, so that would stand to reason. Very difficult to keep this in shot while trying to play it. Just to demonstrate the power saving function of this system, if you were to pause the game like that, and then rather than obviously waste power having the backlight running, you just press the backlight button and the system is still turned on, but it's saving energy because that very power hungry backlight is off. Turn that back on. I can now demonstrate the flip as well. You would simply hold option 2 and press the middle button. There you go. And then when you flip the system, it is now suitable for a lefty, but there is absolutely no chance I'll be able to play it as a lefty. So there you go, we'll take a look at one last game, and that last game is, of course, Paperboy, an Atari classic. Again, fantastic sound, I don't think anyone will disagree with me on that. You choose the course you want to do. I absolutely love Paperboy. You can see graphically, very impressive. Everyone knows the concept of Paperboy. Throw the papers onto people's doorsteps so they can read about how terrible the world is and how we're all going to die from spiralling fuel prices. Still, it's less exciting than global thermonuclear war, which was the threat when this system was released. Oops, smashed the window. And that is the Atari Lynx. Well, once again today, we've seen that the most powerful hardware doesn't necessarily win the console war. As in this case, the high price tag and massive battery consumption of the Lynx let it fall to the cheaper, simpler lighter and more economical Game Boy with its addictive Tetris pack-in game. Nintendo also had a strong hold on third-party developers because of the NES home system and were able to strangle the supply of games for the Lynx just as they did to Sega's Master System. However, the Lynx is definitely a system I'd recommend to retro enthusiasts, and it can be picked up for a fair price on eBay if bought in a bundle. There's also a fantastic homebrew following for the system, which is well worth looking into. That's all we've got time for on this week's show, and indeed for this series of Replay Retro. We'll be taking a break for a few weeks now, before coming back in February for another 12 doses of retro gaming goodness. Don't forget to follow Replay Retro on Twitter for the latest news about the show and for details of our upcoming inter-series competition. And of course, make sure you subscribe so you'll be the first to know when we're back on the tube. Until then, have a great time, and I'll see you in February. You know, I don't know what everyone's moaning about. This thing fits into my pocket perfectly.